Welcome back to the Electronics Inside, the show where we tear down tools, toys and appliances just to find out what's inside. I'm David. Sorry, had noise cancelling on. I'm David, and in this episode we have two pairs of headphones. But there's two of them. Does that make it a pair of headphones? Is that a quad of headphones? Two sets of headphones. Okay, with me I have the Beats Studio 3 and the Sony WM-100XM4s, I think. Don't quote me on that. But these are reasonably comparative in terms of spec. Both with active noise cancelling, both with Bluetooth, both with a wired adapter as well, in case the battery dies or you want to plug it into something. But they are quite different in price range. The Beats you can pick up for about £180, £150, whereas the Sonys are £280, and that's a big difference. And I wondered if the internals really offer anything to show for that difference. Let's find out. Okay, first off, a little bit of definition. There are nominally 4 kinds of personal playback options. 5 if you're going to include jawbone vibration. We're not. So there's the proper in-ears, the ones that actually insert into your ear canal in some way, and they've normally got some sort of expandy, foamy, grommet-y type job that goes in it. There's in-ear, which earbuds sort of sit in the outside of your ear, pushing the sound in. There's on-ear, which are slightly bigger, soft cups that sit on your ear. I find those very uncomfortable in long periods because they actually squash my ears and they eventually hurt. And then there's over-ear, which are these big cups which go over your ear and press against your skull but encapsulate your entire ear. That's my favourite kind, which is why I chose these two, because you stick with what you know. So how do we start with these Beats? Do I have to pop the cups off? I'd say that certainly felt like the way to go. Certainly no screw holes or anything in there. Okay, with that cable is kind of lubricated, which makes sense, I guess, if it's got to reliably sort of slide in and out of there without getting snagged, but that means I'm now covered in some silicone-y type stuff. Lovely. It's like the same glue that holds down batteries and phones and things. Horrible, horrible sticky mess. So that's just a passive cup. It's got some alignment pins in there to make sure you get them the right way up. I can't really see there's much difference there, but they are nothing but stuck on. And now we're in. They've dispensed with the Torx and gone with posi bits. 2 silver ones at the bottom. The silver ones will be, hopefully, holding in that 3.5mm jack. Now these can be used as a hands-free phone or a headset using Bluetooth. However, the 3.5mm jack is only a 3-pole, so what is it? Sleeve collar tip, which means you can only do stereo audio output on them. But the Beats came originally with a cable which had a microphone built in. So the 3.5mm jack at the bottom end actually came with 4 pins, and that lead actually has the microphone built into it, which is a very similar arrangement to what I use with my headphones, albeit mine is actually a separate microphone with a female jack and then a separate male-to-male lead up to the headphones. They're very, very thin drivers. Considering how big and beefy these headphones are, that's really thin. Even with the deformation in the moulding, that's 9 or so millimeters. Interesting, you've got the built-in microphone up here. Now, because these have active noise cancelling, they actually take sound from inside the cup. Compare that to sound outside the cup, which I believe is what this little hole in this one is for. So that's sound cancelling. So that it can then introduce a destructively superimposed wave over the top to try and actively cancel the noise from outside, meaning the wave left over should be next to nothing. In my experience, active noise cancelling in a quiet environment at least just introduces more background noise or ups the sound to noise ratio. So here's the 3.5mm jack on a separate daughter board, which I would say is nice to see, but I'd be very surprised if you can actually get a replacement or a separate for that. So there's a lot of sort of foam components here. You can see that sort of soft latexy silicone foam. Now all of that will help deaden or synthetically increase the mass of equipment that you may vibrate that you don't want vibrating, that might introduce a rattle at loud volumes. What? That little peel off thing's got 4 tiny little washers set into it. What purpose do they serve? So these sort of silicone gaskets allow the sort of articulation of the cup on the headphones without dust, dirt getting inside. So all these tiny little wires, so 4 from the 3.5mm jack, 2 to the speaker, 2 to the microphone, have actually all been glued down to this back plate with what frankly looks like hot glue through here, hiding the next set of screws, which are 4 more posies. And those are very fragile wires, so this is definitely not built with repairability in mind. Okay, hadn't expected that. If you see that actually some of this metallic structure, which they're sort of using like washers to prevent pull through, it's actually got the thermally welded, ultrasonically welded, whatever it is. Keep that front and back half together to keep the silicone in behind that washer. More adhesives to keep the left and right label down. And I bet there's going to be some screws under there. Maybe not. Oh, there are sockets on here. I'd clearly not expected to see that. See, I was wrong. I thought this notch at the top was something to sort of get a tool underneath to lift it up, but it's not. There's actually another microphone there. That must be one of the external microphones for noise cancelling. So the loom that sort of goes from one side to the other, that's actually pretty dense. We've got the blue and red, which, yeah, they're all multi-core cables. So we've actually got 1, 2, 3, which is probably a twisted pair and a ground or a screen. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and a 5th, which again I'm going to say is 2 pair and a screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a 1, 2, 3. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. So much glue in here. I know it's holding all the wires in that would otherwise sort of vibrate and introduce noise or rattling, but it's excessive. It feels like it's just glued together. So I assume it's a very similar assembly this side, but we should end up with a battery in this side too. So back in with the picks to reef off. Same deal again by the looks of it. Now for me, one of the big differences between the Beats and the Sonys is charging port. The Beats has a micro USB which replaces the 3.5mm jack from the other side of the board. Micro USB for charging, whereas a Sony actually has USB Type-C. I think I said this a few teardowns ago, but I'm actually pushing towards USB Type-C with such vigour that I would consider not buying a product if it came with micro USB for charging. Well, very different construction to the other side. So up here we've actually got all the audio. So all the audio handling is done this side. That's the audio hardware, and just the signals come straight up to the micro USB. The micro USB, sorry, it's all becoming clear now. So you've just got microphone and speaker for the noise cancelling and also hands-free equipment, but you've also got the micro USB. Now that occupied these leads coming from the other side, so there must have been one of the leads which came this way, which was just a pair, which is power from a battery, which I assume is taking up the equivalent space of this PCB on this side. And breathe. Again, we've got those 4 little washers. I do not understand what they are for. Almost inclined to say they're like a byproduct of the assembly process, like they're like slugs of plastic that get pushed through the threads on this metal or something. So you actually have the advantage on this side that one of the studs is actually broken, one of the plastic inserts. So I have the advantage that I could see in to know that this side is actually how I expected it to be. It's actually a lift out part, albeit not a very easy one. Wow, all of these are already broken, all but one. That means I don't have brass bushings floating around inside there with the battery. Just a little too much of this is sort of glued or adhered together for my taste. There we go, and see all those broken bushings just sort of falling apart now. Ooh, flat ribbon. So they've got this status LED for the power and charging status. That's got a nice little flex ribbon. So I guess the LEDs are actually, or maybe it's a flex PCB if you want to be more technical. So again, we have got that external microphone there, but this side just happened to be a peel-off cover rather than the buttons like it was on the other side as well. Oh, that microphone disappears straight up at the lead. There's no plugs, no nice disconnects. Well, we do have them this side, but not for everything. And then battery, what do we have up here for a battery? 3.7 volt, 560 milliamp hour. Now these will do 40 hours with active noise cancelling turned off. That's impressive, that's efficient. Although these have been an absolute pain to get into, that battery is on a connector. So it's theoretically possible to get here and replace the battery. It's definitely not easy, but it is possible. So 4 microphones, 2 speakers, 3.5mm jack, micro USB and a 560 milliamp hour battery. Now, although this very proudly proclaims to have an Apple chip on it, unfortunately all the ICs on here, bar one, are potted in. So I couldn't check that out to verify it anyway. Seemingly, the only feature that Apple chip adds to an outward facing consumer, I'm sure there are people that get more into the technicalities than I do that care, but the only technicality that this adds is it adds the audio sharing. So you can have like 2 of these or a pair of AirPods and these connected to the same tablet or phone, listening to the same audio at the same time, which is a very nice feature, but requires iOS 10.3 or later and 2 compatible devices. And I'm not sure that feature alone demands enough to make it worthwhile for a lot of people. On to the Sonys. So Sony and I have a bit of a love-hate relationship, for, as far as teardowns go at least. We've done a few Sony products and they are almost always the most over-engineered, complicated and screw-intensive things to take apart. And some of them have just been absolutely mind-boggling in terms of the process to take them apart correctly. And I don't suppose these will be much different, so wish me luck. Straight off the bat, NFC for pairing, so you can tap your phone to the outside of these, and the controls for these are actually this touch-sensitive pad. There's no physical buttons other than the power and multifunction button here, which can be used to call Siri, call Google Assistant, or something else which I've already forgotten, clearly, and the power. And USB Type-C, yay! Oh, see, you can already see thought going into this. You see how those wires are pre-stressed to collapse in a predictable way. So even without like a central post to guide through, they actually sort of self-coil inside this chamber. Just lovely thought there. Now, while we're talking about Bluetooth headsets, have you ever thought about how Bluetooth audio actually works? Okay, Bluetooth comes with various different profiles depending on what you want to do with it. So there's the Bluetooth serial, there's Bluetooth hands-free headset, which is what you might use to connect your phone to your car for making phone calls. Similarly, a headset for making calls, like the annoying little Bluetooth earbuds that everyone used to use. But there's the audio profile, which is A2DP, which is for sending music, and that will do up to, it's complicated, it's like 300 kilobits a second, but actually you get about 128 kilobits a second of somehow compressed audio out the other end in stereo. That's about as good as Bluetooth can manage. And the type of compression is negotiated, and the features available on a device is negotiated. But it's just very interesting how there was this new aptX Bluetooth profile, which is supposed to be bringing enhancements for audio quality onto Bluetooth headphones, but it was included on the XM3s, the model before this, but dropped for the 2020 XM4s, and the Beats don't support it. So where is the high quality audio? I mean, the Sony support their own bespoke profile, which is not an industry standard and isn't really supported by many things other than their own equipment. So if you want high quality audio, like really high quality audio, Bluetooth actually isn't the way to go. But this is all assuming that you've got the ears to be able to hear it properly, the source files that are high enough quality, FLAC or whatever, or high bitrate MP3. And there's also a question of whether the speakers can actually reproduce it, the quality of the speakers and the environment you're in. You know, listening to it on the underground is going to be a very different experience sat in a quiet room with your headphones on for the maximum enjoyment. Not an audiophile, not an audio expert, but I find the physics and the personal aspects of it very interesting. Good news is I believe that these ear cups are replaceable, so I'm not breaking it, I'm just taking clips out. Okay, that's one side. Interesting, the shaped foam. That's kind of cool. And the driver's off axis to actually give you the best audio. And that is that the microphone? Wow, already this is way cooler. Oh yeah, look. The microphone for the noise cancelling had its own little silicone gasket over it and is not glued into place. It's just got clips moulded into the plastic which hold the cable in. Wow, that's attention to detail. The only thing I will say at the moment in favour of the Beats is all of these screws on the Sony are going straight into plastic, whereas on the Beats they had included the bushings, and yes, we'd saw the bushings fail, although I think that was more of an impact type failure. But bushings are a nice thing, especially if you're going to be taking something apart and reassembling multiple times. Ooh, that's the capacitive touch sensor. So the entire of this sort of back of cup is the capacitive touch sensor. You can see all those little probes. And I'm actually going to remove the ribbon from the motherboard side because that looks like an easier connector to get to. There you go, capacitive touch sensor. Ooh, with a little gasket on the back as well. It's like a little slightly siliconized, sticky detail on these things. I'm already starting to see where the extra money's gone. So the battery's on its own ribbon connector as well. That little hole in the top up here is for an external microphone. Now, if you're going to tell me that's a thermistor keeping an eye on the battery temperature, an NTC temperature probe keeping an eye on the temperature of the battery, for headphones to protect it during charging, I might. It is. Wow. Sony really do care. And the battery capacity, of course, is stated in watt hours, is at least 1000 milliamp hour or 3.7 watt hours. Yeah, it's 1000 milliamp hours at 3.7 watt hours. So that'd be 3.7 volts. That makes sense. But with a thermistor, an NTC temperature probe to protect it during charging. The headphones. I'm speechless. Staggering attention to detail there. And this huge connector up here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20 pin connector is actually what runs all the way through the headphones. It's this little coil up here. So this side's got the capacitive touch sensing, the temperature, the charging, the battery connecting, and the USB Type-C connector on a ribbon so you can change it yourself. Okay, and what do we have on this side? Because there is this extra hole down here, and we've got the buttons. So does that mean the audio processing's over here? Okay, again, shaped foam inserts, perfectly matched. What does that look like, an optical sensor? Do these have off-ear detection? So when that sensor goes dark, it knows it's on your head. And of course, in terms of audio feedback or the audibility to a human, both of these tout pretty much the same thing. I mean, the human ear can hear 20 to 20,000 hertz or 20 to 20 kilohertz. So of course these will both do audio response, frequency responses similar to or exceeding that. It's called main left. It's that tiny little NFC antenna there, and then round the edge again you've got that similar ceiling gasket. The attention to the audio quality on this is fantastic. Oh, you got separate mics. So this one's actually got a microphone here, which would be forward facing slightly. So that will be your one for your headset. And then it's got one downwards, which I guess is used for audio cancelling. Or maybe it's using the two together. These tiny little microphone arrays here. And then you've still got this top one, which is mirrored on the other side for the noise cancelling. No, they only have that on this side, which is the left side? The left side. So yeah, that would face forwards. So yeah, audio mics, totally separate. So this has got 5 microphones. So this optical sensor, I think, is basically an LDR or a slightly fancier optical sensor, which is for off-ear detection. So it'll have basically when it's cupped against your head, it's going to know that there's no light there and it's going to assume it's on your head. And if you take it off, it'll pick up the light and then pause the music dynamically for you. There's actually a MediaTek chip in here. I kind of thought this would all be Sony. And interesting, there's also another coax port on here, which presumably means that you can add another external antenna. I wonder if that was just a test. No, if it was a test part, they would have removed that because that would have added to the cost of the bill of materials. Why would you keep that part on there if it was only used for diagnostics? I don't know, is there a Pro model of these that I'm not familiar with? And I'm also noticing very conspicuously there's an IC missing here. And having what I said earlier about the aptX being removed, I wonder if this board is essentially a recycled version of the XM3s, but with a few parts removed. Well, electronically, these are actually very hard to compare because so much of the electronics are embedded into single ICs or packages or system on a chip or even epoxied over, so we can't really compare apples to apples. But what is really apparent is the attention to detail and build quality. And Sony, with the gaskets that hold the materials in, the choice of materials in the different layers as it makes it up, the use of screws everywhere and very little in adhesion, the extra £100 that the Sonys cost over the Beats, you are getting that in build quality. I don't even think that's a question. What I can't answer is whether you will personally benefit long term from that build quality. Will a set of headphones last long enough that that build quality makes a difference? Will you as a person be able to hear the difference made by those little details in terms of audio quality? That's completely subjective. But what we've seen here is 2 different approaches to the same problem and different answers. I think it's a compelling thing to look at. I hope you agree. If you don't, head over to the Element 14 community and tell me, give me a piece of your mind. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.